Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to explore one of the most transformative periods in early modern European history, the aftermath of the 30 Years' War and how this devastating conflict set the stage for the rise of absolutism across much of the continent. This is a turning point lecture. After 1648, Europe is no longer the same world it had been in the late Middle Ages or even at the height of the Reformation. Political powers shift dramatically, religious unity fractures beyond repair, and rulers begin to claim unprecedented levels of centralized authority. In many ways, this moment marks Europe's transformation into the modern state system. Before moving forward, let's start with some background. What sparked the 30 Years' War? So before we can actually understand the consequences of the war, we need to understand what made it so destructive in the first place and why it spiraled far beyond a localized religious dispute. Let's start with the fractured Holy Roman Empire. By the early 17th century, the Holy Roman Empire was less of a unified empire and more of a loose confederation of territories. It consisted of more than 300 semi-independent states, ranging from large principalities to small city-states and bishoprics. These territories were ruled by competing dynasties and adhered to different religious traditions, Catholicism, Lutheranism, and increasingly Calvinism. The emperor, drawn from the Habsburg family, theoretically stood at the center of this system, but in practice, his authority was limited. Local rulers guarded their autonomy fiercely. This decentralized political structure made the empire highly unstable. Conflict would ignite quickly, and when it did, there were few effective mechanisms to contain it. There were also religious tensions after the Reformation. The Protestant Reformation had permanently fractured Western Christianity. The Peace of Augsburg in 1555 attempted to manage this division with the principle of curios regio esos religio, whose realm, his realm. In theory, this allowed each ruler to determine whether their territory could be Catholic or Lutheran. But Augsburg had two major problems. First, it excluded Calvinism entirely. Second, it did nothing to address the reality that populations did not always share their ruler's faith. As Calvinism spread through urban centers and among powerful nobles, especially in the Rhineland and Bohemia, the fragile religious compromise began to unravel. By the early 1600s, religion had become inseparable from political loyalty and dynastic ambition. Then there was the Bohemian Spark, the demonstration of Prague in 1618. The immediate trigger for war occurred in Bohemia, where Protestant nobles feared the erosion of their religious rights under the Catholic Habsburgs. In 1618, they staged a dramatic act of defiance by throwing two imperial officials out a window of Prague Castle. While the men survived, the symbolism was unmistakable. This act signaled open rebellion against Habsburg authority. It drew in Protestant allies, provoked a Catholic response, and quickly escalated beyond Bohemia. What began as a local uprising soon became a war involving most of Europe. So why did the war expand? The conflict spread so widely because it tapped into deeper structural tensions. Dynastic rivalries, especially between the French Bourbons and the Habsburgs, played a crucial role. So did the balance of power, politics, economic interest, and widespread use of mercenary armies. These mercenaries fought not for faith or loyalty, but for pay, and the prolonged conflict by living off the land. As a result, the 30 Years' War was not just simply a religious war. It became a struggle for political dominance in Central Europe. So let's talk a little bit about the war itself. As a brief overview, the 30 Years' War unfolded in several phases, each shaped by different powers and shifting objectives. The first of these was the Bohemian and Palatinate phase that lasted from 1618 to 1625. This early phase of the war favored the Habsburgs. Protestant rebels were defeated, and Frederick V, known derisively as the Winter King, fled his lands. At this stage, it appeared that Catholic and imperial authority had been firmly reasserted. The second phase was the Danish phase, which lasted from 1625 to 1629. They were concerned about growing power of the Habsburgs. King Christian IV of Denmark intervened on the Protestant side. His campaign, however, ended in failure. Imperial forces under the General Wallston crushed Danish resistance. The phase ended with the Edict of Restitution in 1629, which attempted to restore Catholic lands lost since the Reformation. This was an aggressive move that alarmed Protestant states. The third phase was the Swedish phase, which lasted from 1630 to 1635. The tides turned when Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden entered the war. A brilliant military inventor, He won significant victories and revitalized the Protestant cause. His death at the Battle of Lutzen in 1632 was a major blow, but Sweden remained a formidable force. The fourth phase was the French phase, which lasted from 1635 to 1648. This was the final phase, and it revealed how far the war had moved from its religious origins. Catholic France entered the conflict against the Catholic Habsburgs, driven by geopolitical concerns rather than theology. The war became a struggle over power, territory, and influence. But throughout all these phases, it's very important to note that it was the civilians who suffered the most. The 30 Years' War ranks among the most destructive conflicts in European history prior to the 20th century. The population loss was a major factor of this. In some regions of the Holy Roman Empire, between 25 and 40% of the population died. Most did not die in battle. Instead, famine, disease, and displacement proved far deadlier than swords or muskets. The collapse of rural life was also a factor. Agricultural systems collapsed as fields went untilled and livestock was either stolen or slaughtered. Entire villages disappeared. Mercenary armies created scorched earth zones, while banditry flourished in the absence of order. There's also this economic contraction. Trade networks were disintegrated, tax bases collapsed, and inflation soared. States emerged from this war deeply indebted, struggling to rebuild their shattered economies. Perhaps most importantly, though, the war left a profound psychological scar. Decades of violence produced exhaustion, cynicism, and a deep longing for stability. This widespread desire for order would have major political consequences in the decades that then followed. The war finally ended with the Peace of Westphalia, which was one of the most important diplomatic settlements in Western history. The negotiators sought to end the war, rebalance power in Europe, redraw borders, and prevent future religious conflicts. This process took 4 years and involved dozens of delegations, which was a remarkable diplomatic effort.
So, we're agreed. France gets the city of Pinerolo and the bishopric of Metz, and to Sweden goes Western Pomerania, Wismar, Stettin, and the islands of Rügen and Pearl. Oh, lovely. And England, for applying within 28 days, gets this charming carriage cloth.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm very kind.
All right, well, I think that concludes our treaty. Gentlemen, a toast. Peace in Europe.
Peace in Europe.
Excellent.
Excuse me.
Oh, what is it now? Why are you interrupting?
Forgive me, Ambassador, but what about Luxembourg?
He's right. Nobody owns Luxembourg.
France, I thought you owned Luxembourg.
No, we thought it was Dutch.
Sweden?
No, we thought it was Belgium.
England?
Well, we just knew it was on the continent and didn't give a toss, really.
It looks as if Luxembourg has slipped through our net, doesn't it? Well, we've got a country going up for grabs. Anybody interested?
Is it Protestant?
Mostly Catholic, I believe.
Let's just use it for storage.
Oh, yeah, good. No, that's good.
No, it's not good. Someone's got to take it. Come on, who wants it? What's it consist of?
The small state of Luxembourg is a charming reminder of how Europe used to be. Plague victims crawl elegantly down its dung-filled streets, greasing the way with pus from their buboes, while at least 2 children a week are burned as the devil in the handsome market square.
Westphalia formally recognized the sovereignty of individual states within the Holy Roman Empire. Each gained legal autonomy, control over internal affairs, and the right to conduct foreign policy. Calvinism was finally granted legal recognition, reducing religious tensions within the empire. Territorial adjustments strengthened France and Sweden while weakening the emperor, whose authority became largely symbolic. The Peace of Westphalia marked a decisive shift away from medieval universalism. It established the principles of territorial sovereignty, non-interference, and secular diplomacy, principles that still shape international relations today. In the wake of devastation, absolutism flourished. Populations, traumatized by decades of chaos, desired stability, predictability, and strong leadership. Rulers who promised order and protection found widespread support. The war also demonstrated the necessity of standing armies, which required regular taxation and centralized administration. As monarchs built bureaucracies to fund and manage armies, their power expanded dramatically. At the same time, traditional feudal nobles lost political autonomy. Many were absorbed into court life, becoming dependent on a royal favor rather than local power. Governance increasingly relied on professional officials, written records, and uniform laws. This marked a decisive shift from medieval personal rule to early modern bureaucratic monarchy. So what exactly is absolutism? Well, to put it simply, it's a political system where a singular ruler, like a monarch or a dictator, holds complete, unrestricted power, controlling the government and the people without legal or institutional checks from bodies like legislators, courts, or even the church. It's a concentrated, unlimited authority, often justified by divine right, where the ruler's word is law, with no real limits on their authority.
John Lilburn, not speak the truth about this king that tells us God gave him his throne. I say to you, he is a tyrant that will not let his parliament sit. Charles Stuart has no divine right. For writing this, I am whipped.
Will you recant, John? The king promises your freedom if you'll renounce your pamphlet.
My liberty is his to take, not to give. I am freeborn, John Lilburn.
France, under King Louis XIV, became the classic model of absolutism. Louis XIV is perhaps the most famous example, as the quote, "L'État c'est moi," meaning "the state is me," is often attributed to him, although historians aren't fully convinced that he truly said this. Regardless, through his centralized administration, control of the nobility at Versailles, mercantilist economic policies, religious uniformity, and a massive standing army, Louis embodied the absolutist ideal. Elsewhere, Brandenburg Prussia used military discipline and efficient taxation to rise as a major power. The Habsburgs consolidated their territories and rebuilt after the war, while Russia under Peter the Great adopted Western administrative and military practices to strengthen the state. These examples show that absolutism took different forms, but followed similar patterns. Absolutism was not universal. England followed a very different path, marked by civil war, regicide, and ultimately constitutional monarchy. The Dutch Republic thrived as a decentralized commercial state. Philosophers like John Locke challenged the absolutist claims, arguing for natural rights, consent of the governed, and the rule of law, ideas that would later inspire liberal revolutions. In conclusion, the 30 Years' War shattered the medieval dream of a unified Christian Europe. The Peace of Westphalia created a new political order based on sovereign states. In the search for stability, monarchs amassed unprecedented power, ushering in the age of absolutism. Yet, absolutism also provoked resistance, political, institutional, and intellectual. By the end of the 17th century, Europe stood transformed. The medieval world was gone, replaced by a modern system of states, centralized authority, and international diplomacy.